Good morning, everybody. So this recording on Process Lady, she's never ever late. It's been a little bit of a pet hate of mine recently because she just almost butts into a conversation when when you're talking. Yeah, we're getting used to the American accent. But welcome. Hopefully, one of these days we could have South African on there. Welcome to this session. I'm really excited to have a lot of you get onto this call today. Our session is Meet the Bots, how Hyundai SA transformed the finance using RPA, or Robotic Process Automation. So really excited to have all of you come on here. I can see a lot of familiar names as you come in. Those of you that have been on this on a few of my webinars, please select all panelists and all attendees. Good morning, Val. I see Val has already done that. Select all panelists and attendees in the chat. Tell us your name, and you can even tell us where you're dialing in from. As you select those options, so we can all interact, have a great conversation this morning. So really, really excited for this session. A lot of interest, and good to go. So as you can see, like I said, my name is Brian. I'm the community manager at CFO South Africa. And our session today is about RPA, and is brought to us by TreasuryONE and Automation Anywhere. So really, really excited. Hi, Eddie from Cape Town. Excellent. We got people from Mr. Price, Rustenburg. It's getting a little bit warmer in Pretoria, where I am. So the scarf is just a little bit of a, so I can avoid wearing a sweater during this morning. So good morning. In this webinar, you'll discover what processes Hyundai have automated and how bots pay themselves, right? That'll be interesting. And how quickly you can scale up with an experienced and implementation partner and a visionary finance team. So this looks to be very, very exciting stuff. So really excited to have a lot of you come onto this session. So before I start off our session, I'm going to give it a few more minutes. I can see a lot of people are still coming in. I'm going to give it a few more minutes and allow other people also to join, because like I said, there's been a huge demand for this session itself. Okay, so as we get ourselves ready, as we get ourselves into the grove, and if you're just joining us, please feel free to select in the chat where you are. Tell us where you are, and your name, how you're feeling today could be very, very useful to us all. Morning, Benjamin. Good to have all you join us today. Please select all panelists, all attendees, so we can interact and share some communication, and we can be able to respond to any of the questions that come in. I usually like to let it ride for until about 5 past, but I can see a lot of people already on here and good to go. As we go, listen, this is a very interactive session. If you have anything to say, a question to ask, please feel welcome to put it in the chat. My fantastic panelists will try and address any of your questions, any insights that you may want to share. We'll pull them out from there. So today, just perhaps let me start with some of the pleasantries. We'll hear from Tinus Venter. Tinus is the CFO of Hyundai Automotive South Africa, and he'll tell us about his vision for the automation of finance operations, which is really, really exciting to hear. I've heard the story, really good one. He'll also be joined by Rudolf Janssen van Rensburg, who's the CTO at TreasuryONE. And he'll show us just how simple it is to do some of the cool stuff that Hyundai has been able to do, and how easy it is to transform your business with an experienced automation implementation partner. So with that, I would like to at least call upon my guests. Maybe they can briefly introduce themselves as a kickoff. I'm going to start with our esteemed guest, Tinus Venter. CFO of Hyundai. Tinas, welcome. If you'd like to say hello.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for welcoming me. Yeah, I was looking forward to explaining a bit of the things that we've done.
Awesome, awesome. And then Rudolf.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. It's always fun to talk to the CFO community, and really looking forward to today's session. And yeah, please keep the questions going. We want to be able to answer as many of those as we go along. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. So very dynamic group, guys. Rustenburg to Bloemfontein. So really excited to have you all. It's not every day that we engage such high caliber panelists as we have today. And I know we were expecting to see Yvonne Asen on this call as well. Unfortunately, she had to dash off and address some personal matters. But do not dismayed. We still have some of the top CFO in the country and also the top CTO as well. So there'll be a lot of information that will still be shared. So I'll remind you again, if you want to ask any questions, please select all panelists and attendees so we can all interact with you. However, before we kick off, I wanted to get a sense of the type of audience that we might have in this group. And to do that, I'm going to run a quick poll. It'll be some simple questions. If you can all engage, it'll be great. I'm going to launch the poll. It's a couple of questions, 3 to be precise. Very simple questions. I'll encourage you all to participate. So let's see. I want to see the type of people that are here. How much do you know about RPA itself? And the first question: do you trust the robotic process automation? Do you trust it? Do you trust the software? Do you trust what happens in the background? Tell us. Second question: is RPA in your finance strategic roadmap? Is this something that you're looking to do as a business, or are you already on it, or you're not even considering it? Perhaps we should have had a maybe. Please call me and help me after this session. That's the second question. And the third question is, perhaps it's a skills thing, perhaps it's a capability. Is the lack of skilled resources holding you back from RPA implementation? Is it holding you back from RPA implementation? Do you feel that you're challenged, you cannot get the right resources or the right people to help you out? We're going pretty well. We've already hit the 65% mark and rising. Awesome. If I can hit 80, I'll be super excited with that response rate. So 3 simple questions if you're just joining us. Do you trust this robotic process automation? Second question, is this something that you are planning as a business to implement in your organization? And do you believe that? Third question, the lack of skills, capability, etc., is holding you back from implementation, from doing some of this really cool stuff. I've had the opportunity to speak to our esteemed guests here. It's really excellent and exciting stuff. I wish I could do it. Perhaps I could be a bot that's running this poll and feedback to everybody as it comes along. So we're almost at the 80%. Come on, just a few more people. Just a few more people. If we hit 80, I'll launch the results. We're doing pretty well on the numbers. I'm going to wrap it up on the audience. So this is going to go once, going twice, and I'm going to close off this poll. And I'm going to call up my guests a bit, actually. So let's look at this. Rudolf, I want to go to you. Question 1, do you trust this process? There's still 9% of people that don't trust it, but the bulk of people are saying, hey, bring it on. What are your thoughts, Rudolf?
Yeah, I think that's quite a shift from probably the first webinar we did 18 months ago. Sort of, I won't say, I mean, initially probably we were about 50-50. So yeah, it's good to see that obviously, based on the adoption, there's a lot more, people are positive about it. So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to see that shift. People are really kind of starting to understand how cool some of this stuff really is, and how useful it could save you time and save you money, I believe. Second question, I'm going to go to Tinas for this one. RPA, is it in your strategic roadmap? The interesting thing is, even though we've got 90% saying, I trust this process, there's still 37% that, are not even, having it as part of their strategic roadmap. What are your thoughts, Stevens?
Well, at least on this call, so that's a start, I would say. So I think for me as well, I think to start this process, you do think it's a bit of a mountain to climb. But, I think once you start getting into it, you realize it's not so difficult to actually do. So I think that's more, I would say, the biggest reason why some people don't even include it in their strategic thinking, just because of the mountain that they think they need to climb.
Yeah, so we're hoping we're going to tackle that today. It's not such a big mountain, and this is why we have Hyundai South Africa doing some really cool stuff with it. And the last question is really the lack of skilled resources. Rudolph, as a CTO, and you do this kind of stuff quite easily, I presume. People still believe there's a lack of skill sets. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I minimized the screen, but I think it was about 40%.
Well, 57% are saying it's a lack of skills, right? So that's a significant number given we've got over 100 people on the call.
Yeah, look, I mean, if I look through our client base, it's more or less, let's call it 30% of the clients that sort of use us in the beginning, but they always have the plan to build their own internal capabilities. So more or less in line with where the market is. It was relatively new in South Africa, so there is a shortage of it. It's not like a ERP consultant, for example, where there's a lot out there in the market. RPA is a scarce skill if you want to be very, very good at it. So that's definitely understandable. So that's not an unexpected percentage, but again, good for me because that means there's a lot of potential clients out there. So
potential clients and a lot of people that you may have to train up.
Yes.
A lot of people that you may have to train up. Just a side question. How long would it take if somebody wanted to get involved in this?
So look, the almost the most important person in the process is the process owners themselves. So, I mean, we can chat about Tinus's solution because the people have such a good grasp on the process itself that they want us to automate and they quickly understand it. And that's the internal business people. If they know what they're doing, that makes our lives a lot easier. And then it depends on your background. Remember, there's different roles. So you can be a business analyst or you can be sort of a bot developer, if I can call it that. Business analyst, the person that sort of understands the process, designs it, etc. That's like a 2-3 month sort of upskill. From a bot developer point of view, depending on your background, it can take anywhere from three months to a year to get up to a speed where we would, put you on a project to deploy tasks for our clients.
Yeah, I think it's also only fair for me to ask the man who is actually doing this, right? Tinus Fenter at Hyundai, what is the skill set like? I mean, did it take a lot of time for you to ramp up to be able to do this?
So Brian, yes, it definitely did take time, but I don't think that anybody needs to be scared of the skills that's required. I think in this case, obviously TreasuryONE, the skills that they brought to us to explain to us what they needed for us to automate a process. That's where I would say this skill is required. But from the side on where we sit, it was about making the decision what we want to automate. And then, like Rudolph explained, you need to understand what the actual debits and credits is that's being done, and you need to understand what document you use to process that transaction. But that's about the skills, I would say. I mean, the real skills is on the other side of the coin, where they get the bots to actually do what needs to be done, what the human did before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's quite interesting. The other interesting thing that I found actually just quickly on that survey was that there was at least about 20% that are not citing skill set as a challenge. So I'm curious to know from the audience. So put it in the chat if you're one of those. I think it's almost 20%. Let us know, what else do you believe is holding you back? If it's not the skill set on the third question, 20% of you said it was something else. Tell us what it is, and it'll be great for us to kind of get a sense of what other challenges are out there other than skill sets. But with that, I would like to, get Rudolph kind of ready. I know you've prepared something that you want to take us through for today's session. So I'm going to get you all set up. I think you want to probably use a couple of slides that you want to take the audience through, Rudolph. This is a good time to have them up, and you can take it away. You lay out the foundation, and then we'll touch base when you are through. Over to you, Rudolph.
Thanks. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me just do one more thing. Okay. Good. Thanks for that. I might take myself off of video because I get distracted by my own face when I'm trying to explain some of these things. Let's see how we go. So yeah, I just want to take 10 minutes, and Brian, you must have the music ready if I do go over 10 minutes. Start playing your violin or something, because yeah, once I get going, sometimes difficult to stop me. But I want to just touch on three things. So I just want to update the community on where we are in terms of the RPA market in general and within South Africa. And then I also obviously want to just explain what happened. I think we've got some common webinar attendees across all the 4 webinars that we've done. So I just want to update the community on where we are with the Automation Anywhere platform, or some updates on that. And then the third one we'll do after the panel discussion. We will actually go into and explain some of the bots that we have running for Hyundai. So RPA market updates. So interestingly enough, the early adoption phase is actually over globally. So we are now actually entering the early majority. So just in terms of a level of adoption, if probably in South Africa, you would still be considered an early adopter. But if you look at it from a global scale, the RPA penetration has actually gone now to the early majority. And essentially what that means is RPA is now part of your standard enterprise software landscape. Like you have an ERP and you have an accounting system, CRM, etc. RPA is now considered part of the enterprise software landscape. And just so you know, we always refer to Gartner when it comes to the research and the statistics. So according to them, 90% of large organizations will have adopted RPA in some form by 2022. And their calculations, and I knew the poll question was going to come up, so I put this one up on purpose, is around 80% of finance leaders have either implemented or planning to implement RPA. So again, you can see that if we take our attendees as a subset, we're slightly behind the global trend. But it's quite interesting to take note that RPA is now sort of part of the enterprise software fabric. Then just some updates on Automation Anywhere. So very important for us is they actually, if you think about software, everyone knows that more or less everything is going cloud. And you have to build something to be cloud from the ground up. You can't take something that is an on-premise type of solution and then try to fit it in with the cloud strategy. So what Automation Anywhere has done, or did sort of 3-4 years ago, is they made a massive investment and actually rebuilt the platform from the ground up to be a cloud native platform. And according to IDC, which is not the Industrial Development Corporation, it's a global IT research firm. They have 54% of the global public cloud market share within the RPA market. So that's that investment is obviously paying off, and they are now the first RPA platform to be available in our continent of Africa, and they launched in the Amazon Web Services, or AWS, in Cape Town at the back end of last year. So that's very exciting for us. I know Poppy is a headache for basically everyone. So it's good to know that you can be cloud native with your RPA platform, and you can also actually deploy it within your own country, which helps with some of all those little data things. Then the platform expansion. So again, if you look back at the previous slide, the early adopters are obviously sort of the leading edge people, and they jump into something quickly. But once the market moves into the mass adoption phase, they're looking for a platform. And this is where Automation Anywhere has done really well in the last sort of 12 to 18 months is after going cloud native, expanding that platform. And I'll just touch on two of the items that they've expanded on, being the process discovery and RE, which is a digital assistant. So again, this is not things that they just thought up about themselves. This is things that the market wanted. So they wanted a tool for process discovery that helps customers to document and essentially discover processes quicker. And then also from a workflow point of view, yes, the bots are really, really good at automating tasks on a very high volume, repetitive basis. But when you need to put people in the loop for decision-making, verification of documentation, and you need to automate processes that take sort of a week and longer with different customer interactions, you need a workflow tool. And that's where the platform has expanded towards. So if I can just quickly touch on those things. So the platform now consists of Discover, which is the discovery bot, Capture, which is the IQ bot, where essentially we use machine learning to extract information from unstructured data, which would, in most cases that we deal with, would be scanned documents. Then on the automation side, your typical bots. So we essentially have three different types of bots now. Attended automation, where there's a person triggering the tasks. Unattended automation, where you essentially schedule or tell a bot to do something. It goes and does its thing and comes back and tell you that it's completed without actually any interaction. And now the RE, which is the digital assistant, which I'll touch on now. And then bot insights, which is essentially your RPA cockpit, which tells you how busy the bots are, how much work are they doing, how productive are they being, how much capacity do you have, and all those specific things. So just on the two new items within the platform itself. So process discovery. So essentially what it does is if there's a new process, you don't have it documented and you're unsure actually how that process works or how to communicate it to someone like us to assist you with it. You would actually have an agent installed on your computer. And then as you click your mouse through your process, the agent actually then captures every single step that you do into a process. And then once you finish with that process, you can add some comments to it, etc. And then it actually comes to us as your development partner or your bot developers as a pre-completed process, and then we can build some error handling in and things like that. So it really speeds up the process between identifying a process and getting it to production. Really just shrinks that time frame. And then what they've also done now is RE. So in the next slide, I think I'm actually going to stick within my 10 minutes. The next one is I'm just going to show a 4-minute video on RE. So what they've done is just think about what we use the most of the time, the unattended bots, as a bot that you can instruct to do something. It goes away and does its work in unattended mode. So it doesn't need your help. So we have a lot of those bots sitting in the back end. But now what Automation Anywhere has done is they've given us a tool where we can create web forms, customize them, and put decision blocks into the process. And they've also allowed the platform to expand into things like queues. So the way I always think about it in a finance, I will show a sort of a sensitive data change. But if you think about a quote, creating a quote or getting a quote up into an order, that's a good use case for something like RE. Or if you're working in a call center environment where you have to deal with multiple applications at the same time, and you need to fetch data from different sources, the user working on RE just sees a customized screen which actually walks them through, and every action that they take or decision that they make, then you use the unattended bots in the back end to actually perform those tasks for you. So it really, really expands the platform into a automation platform and not just thinking about bots. And because the platform integrates so well with multiple different application types and types of integration, this is really a platform now that you can put into your business, and then you can expand and link your different applications to it. And now you have the complete workflow package as well. So let's try do a video. Okay, So this video that I'm going to show you now is again a typical example where bots struggle to perform specific tasks. For example, a bot cannot verify Brian's signature on a document. That a person still needs to do that. And in some cases, clients have sensitive data that they need to change on a system, and that sensitive data needs to be authorized by someone, and that document needs to be signed. So that's the process that I'm going to explain to you through this video. And I'm going to pause at certain stages just to explain actually what is happening. So this is just the bot kickstarting itself. And you can immediately see the little screen that is brought up here has 4 different options. So the option that the user is going to select now is to modify an existing account. So what the user has to do is to complete the policy number for that specific account. And then once the user clicks the fetch data button, sorry about that. Maybe I must click the right button. Okay, so when the user actually, so again, this is a customized form that was built for the specific process. And when the user clicked on that fetch data button over there, the unattended bot went into a backend system and fetched the data and is now displaying it on the screen for the user. And in this case, now the user has different options in terms of what they want to do with this customer's information, and they're going to click and select an address change. So select the address change, the customer's address pops up. The user then types in the new address for the specific change. And then the user will select that this process needs to be done by DocuSign. Sorry, I have to stop it sometimes because the bot goes too quickly. So essentially what the bot has now done is opened up the template that caters for this specific address change. You can also think about in a finance space, something like a changing of banking details of one of your vendors on the banking system or on your ERP system. Typically, those things needs a lot of workflow and sign off. So the bot has opened up the templates, completed all the information, so the user actually does not need to type anything in. In this case, this company is using DocuSign to get the signature done. This is now actually the user selecting the specific document for signature and just dragging the signature on. So DocuSign and all these different types of platforms also have integration capabilities, so the bot could actually do that piece for you as well. So the user prep the document and send it for signature. So now what's going to happen is going to show the side of the actual person signing or approving this specific document. So this person is just navigating DocuSign quickly, putting their signature and finishing. Now, while this has happened, the user that requested the address change has gone on with their day-to-day lives, doing whatever other processes they need to do on a daily basis. And now what the bot's actually doing is looping through the emails to look for that document that it's expecting to be signed. Once it's found that document, it's actually going to open it up. And this is again something which an unattended bot cannot do, is go and verify the signature to make sure that that signature has been signed by the correct signatory. And then the user has a selection to say signature found or signature not found. Now, the second bit of this is going to go really quickly, because after the user selects or confirms that the signature has been found, the bot's actually going to go into their Salesforce system and then physically go and do the actual address change, and then also link the document that is proof that the process was followed from a signature point of view also onto Salesforce. Done. Okay, that's it. So again, you can see you've got the power of the unattended bots, but now also you have the customization of building your own web forms and actually taking your processes and digitizing or making them easier. I know everyone's probably got an online signing platform now after everyone's been in lockdown and those sorts of things. But this then essentially speed ups the process and makes people more productive. They can go on with their day-to-day lives, and the bot just takes care of the process itself, but you still need people in between to make the decisions and assist the bot in some instances. And then obviously the bot then goes and makes that actual change in the backend system as well. It didn't start playing the music, so Shima. I didn't go over my 10 minutes.
You're very close, but really cool stuff. I mean, I was intrigued. I was like, I don't know if I want more right now, but we're working on a clock as well. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. And again, audience, if you guys have a question, please put it in the chat so we can start engaging. And there's a lot of stuff there that Rudolf showed us. But I want to go to Tinus quickly. Just bring him in before we get into the meat of this conversation. And can you perhaps, Tinus, tell us a bit about, just briefly about Hyundai South Africa. I mean, you're a fairly well-known brand, but tell us about you. How big you are, etc., and what is your role, perhaps, in getting this processes up and running?
Thanks, Grania. So we are fully owned by Motors Group. I saw some familiar names on the panel there, so there's some people that know who we are. So yeah, Motors owns us. It obviously used to be part of Imperial, which split about 2 years ago. Hyundai South Africa has around 100 dealers across the country. I think where the Motors brands, importer brands, is a bit different than from many other importers, is that we actually own many of our own dealers as well. So we look at the wholesale, the distribution, and the retail side of the business. So of that 100 dealers that I've just mentioned, about 45 of those dealers we own ourselves. And just because we own all of these dealers means there's a huge amount of intercompany transactions that takes place, which we'll get into the later detail. So that's Hyundai in itself. From a size point of view, I think the easiest way to compare our size is if we look at the NAAMSA numbers. NAAMSA is where all the OEMs report their sales figures every month. And we obviously compete mostly into the passenger market, and there we're the third biggest in the country, with Toyota and VW being number 1 and number 2. So yeah, that's us. That's us in a nutshell. In terms of my role, I guess it's similar like any other finance role. You almost touch and involve in all sides of the business. I try to be involved and be aware of decisions that's being made, to just understand and almost quantify the impact that it can have on the importer side as well as on the dealership side. I think that's always important for us. It's run as 2 separate businesses, but it's still one balance sheet effectively when we consolidate everything. So that's where I fit in and make sure that it all balances out.
Yeah, good. And thank you for recognizing that there are some people from Motors in the audience. Always good to recognize the owners, right? Tinus, I want to stay with you quickly. So, what got you onto this RPA journey? Were you just tired of spreadsheets? What were some of your pain points?
Yeah, definitely spreadsheets. And I think also you all very often hear that people say, "Oh, finance role is boring and you just do the same thing every day and you repeat what you did today and tomorrow and next week and next month." So I've always been looking at ways of how you can just take out that boring stuff. And it started very small. I mean, so the accounting system that we use allowed us, for example, to set up like sundry invoicing that's every single month the same. So like, for example, we invoice our dealers an admin fee every month. So we've managed to do that like many years ago already, just I don't need someone to go and process a button every single month to do that invoicing. But obviously that type of system runs out of steam at a point where you want to do some more automation. So that was the first thinking about how do we just make life a little bit less boring for some of the clerks. But secondly, I was always aware of the huge amount of intercompany transactions that takes place. So as an example, in our distribution team at the importer, we would have a team that goes and invoice the vehicle. That invoice needs to be captured at the dealership side to stock that vehicle again. So effectively, I've got two people doing one transaction across the country. So that's always been my thinking, is that how can we just minimize that, especially when we work with each other within the same business, to see how we can minimize that and see save time with that.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, Rudolf, I want to come to you because just given what some of the things that Tinus has said, right? So basically, you are in the business of making finance cool again, right? And making it less boring, right?
I'll put that on my business card.
This is your business, but let's really get into it. How simple is it to transform your business to get ready for automation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a lot simpler than people think. Again, to Tinus's point, he used the word boring, but repetitive, things are very, very easy to automate, and specifically on the finance side. I mean, there's rules. Tinus also referred to the debits and credits. I mean, there's rules in place. So from an unattended automation point of view, finance is definitely the easiest place to start. And people tend to forget how flexible the bots are in terms of how many different applications they can talk to. So even if you in some type of other IT project or anything like that going on, you can still go for something like RPA because it's immediately saving you time. We always say that the process owner we referred to previously, they might spend 3 hours with us in the first month to automate one of their processes. But then the next month, they get 6, 10, 20 hours back, which they can then plow into other projects. So it's actually quite simple, and RPA is a very non-disruptive system deployment because it's actually just, it's quick to deploy, and you actually take work away from people very quickly. It's not like I don't want to bash ERPs, but ERP implementation is you have all these intense workshops and designs, and it takes months, years, etc. to do. Where RPA is, like I say, we need about 3 or 4 hours of a process owner's time, and then the next month that work sort of goes away.
I know you've already started to allude to it, but perhaps we can kind of double click on that point of where do I start if I'm a business? I mean, I'm seeing questions kind of on the chat around that point. What size of a business? Where do I start? Do I need a trusted partner, for example?
Yeah, I guess the thing is, size is not that. It's not always. It depends on the type of transactions. So if you have high volume repetitive transactions, you can be very small, and RPA would still make sense for you. Obviously, the bigger you are, the more of those sorts of processes that you have, it's easier. But you'd be not shocked, but it's interesting to see sometimes even small what we would term smaller businesses have a lot of high volume transactions which can be easily automated. And again, on the partner side, I mean, experience is obviously the best thing that you can have with something like RPA, because the last thing you want to do is automate something that should never have been automated. That wastes time on both sides, and that just comes with time and experience in terms of what's a good idea and what's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And Tinus, for you, let's talk a bit more specifically about the RPA space that you are involved in, right? How did you make the decision on what to automate? And Rudolf has alluded to some of the things that you need to make a decision. How did you make the decision? And what to automate, what not to automate? How long did it take to implement? And perhaps how much time are you saving as a business? So a bunch of questions in there.
So in terms of how long does it take? We've been on this road for about a year, and I don't think we finished. So I think you need to decide process by process or transaction by transaction what you want to automate, and you need to make a decision on how many of those things you need to automate. So like I said, we've been we've been busy with a year. I'm guessing probably between 12 and 15 different types of transactions has been automated. And we're definitely not finished. We only just finished with the importer now, and we're going to start rolling over to the dealership side. In terms of how you decide what to do, it's exactly like Rudolf said. You need to go and look at what is repetitive, what is high volume. We'll go into the detail a bit later, but for example, one of the things that we've automated was the transactions that we need to process for the duties and the clearing charges of our vehicles. And I remember in the days that I started, the boxes and the boxes of invoices that our clearing agents were sending to us, that somebody needed to go through each one of those invoices, capture the duty payable, the VAT payable, the clearing charges of that vehicle and of the parts. And yeah, that's all gone now. So we obviously still get the boxes, but we get the boxes just to archive them. We don't even touch them. Just gets processed. So I think that's the start. You need to go and say to yourself, well, this is taking one of my team members every month 3-4 days to capture. It's the same thing every single month. So can a robot do this, and a human is not necessary to do it?
Yeah, so I mean, as a CFO, I'm pretty sure you're happy with the fact that you're now involved in some of the strategic decisions that you make as a business. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the next bit with Rudolf, at least a use case that you're going to show us. Before you start, Rudolf, I actually had a question that came up, and perhaps you can touch on it. And it's regarding integration with APIs, etc. That came up on the chat. Can I integrate with my my business intelligence, etc.?
Yeah. No, so I mean, it's easier. I also saw the question on the site. So for some clients, we develop some reports for them to assist with some of the things that we do. Other clients, if you use something like ClickView or Microsoft Power BI, whatever the case might be, we would just push whatever data you need us to push in there for it to then fit in with your current reporting tool. So again, and like I said, API, direct database integration, those things are really, really simply done and easy within RPA.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
You're going to take us to use cases now, right?
Yeah. So we've got 3. So the first one is probably our most common one. It's large volume invoices. The reason why I want to touch on this one is in Tinus's example, they've actually got an EDI, which is I think it's electronic data interchange between themselves and this vendor. So when the vendor provides services for them, to actually push that data into their ERP system, and then they receive an invoice. So our job was to actually then take that invoice, which we then receive on a daily basis via email. That was our trigger. We actually receive it in a CSV from which we need to extract information. Then we have to, in all the processes, do some validations and recalculations. In this case, I won't name the vendor's name, but they sometimes mess up the VAT calcs, so we have to fix that. Double check the totals, check for duplicates, those sorts of things that we do. And then because the data is already in their system through the EDI, we then actually post the other side of the leg and then do a recon at the same time. So not only are we processing, taking away the mundane processing of the invoice itself, we're actually performing a reconciliation just after we process the invoice. And then if there's any discrepancies, then we will send it to the correct person within finance to make sure, and then that's a check for Tinus and his team to make sure that the EDI and what is invoiced actually is correct and matches each other. And like I said, 99.9% of the time, there's going to be no issue. But someone still has to perform that control and that check to make sure that it works. But now the control and the processing is done by the bot itself. And that's on about 200 invoices a month. The other use case, which is again quite a common one, is sweeping. So a lot of our clients have sweeping structures in place where you take money from all your subsidiaries or divisions on a daily basis, and you keep the funding in a central place. What made Tinus and them, like you mentioned, they own 45 of the dealerships. So every single day there's actually a sweep between the dealerships and the importer or head office. And Tinus's structure actually runs across two different banks. So in this case, what's actually quite interesting is the bank would actually email us the bank statements on a daily basis directly from the bank. The one bank sends it in a PDF, the other bank sends it in a CSV. Then on the validation and recalculation side, we again have to do some consistency checks. You can understand, a bank statement needs to balance, the opening balance plus the transactions should equal the closing balance. So we do some sort of checks like that, and we also check it for completeness. So again, we always try and do these things before we process something, because we never want to put something into the system that's incorrect. So there's a lot of validations and recalculations that we do. And then we actually process the entries in the cash book or the nominal ledger on both sides. So we process it on the entity side and the importer side, and then also do the processing on the dealership side. And because in most cases, what we found, your typical ERP system is not a banking system, so it doesn't do very well with interest calculations. So in Hyundai's case, we actually do a daily interest calc based on all the intercompany balances between the importer and the dealerships. And every month end, after we've calculated the interest, we then again post the interest in both entities. And then we also give them sort of a daily report that just shows cumulative balances, so they can see how much money is owed between the importer and the dealerships. And then we also look at the interest forecast going forward. And the reason why this is a great process is because it's quite a common one. And sometimes, sweeping is a great thing to manage your cash better. And you can save a lot of interest costs and those sorts of things. But then you suddenly have this whole intercompany, intergroup recon to take care of. And with the bots, obviously, that whole process has now been automated. And we process about 1,500 journals a month just on the sweeping one. Okay. Then the last one, this is the coolest one. So it's the intercompany bot. So like Tinus mentioned, so Tinus can jump in here, but you guys have got like the spots distribution center. So every time you kit out a Hyundai with a new radio or a new navigation system or something like that, that is a transaction between the importer and the dealership. So it's really, really, really high volume. And to make everyone's lives easier, or to make that a cleaner process, historically how it was done was that an invoice was issued, and then that invoice a remittance was issued, it becomes an invoice, and then it was actually paid through the bank account, just to keep everything clean. So now what we've done with Tinus and his team is to actually automate this whole process. And this is a really, really high volume one. So intraday, the processes happen. But in this case, we have to actually validate the sender. So some of the information that we receive via email in this case comes from a specific system. So we have to make sure that we are receiving the information from the correct email address. So we validate that. It's all PDF. There's 100 to 400 pages on each PDF. And then each of these invoice pages can contain, or sections can contain between 1,000 and 5,000 invoices at a time. Then from a validation point of view, let's make sure there's not zero totals, it's not a negative amount. And then we also do duplication checks. So there's a unique reference on every remittance. We store that reference. And every time we get a new remittance, we actually check back to make sure that we've not received a duplicate. So again, we control that part of the process. And then we process it on the front end. And then again, because we did the sweeping thing, we actually process it through the intercompany loan accounts. So this saves time, does the controls, and then also saves money in terms of bank fees with all the different payments going across the different entities. And that's more than 10,000 invoices a month. So this is a really, really high volume one. think in terms of monthly hours saved, about 400 or something, 480.
So what I can add on here, so we've never managed to be able to get a link between our bank that we use and our ERP system. So my accountants needed to go and log onto the banking system and obviously process that EFT, and whatever they did on there, they needed to go and do the same again on the ERP system to show that it goes against the bank and it goes against the creditor. That's the manual way we've made payments from the importer for rebates and that type of stuff, but then also from the dealership sides, paying the parts and paying the cars. That's now gone. So literally we do it like this. It gets processed with the bots with loan accounts. So we don't even log into the bank account to process payments between the divisions.
Good. That's me.
How's you? Yeah. So
Are you speechless, Brian?
I am stunned. Like I said, you're in the business of making finance cool again, right? So I'm absolutely stunned with some of the stuff. I'm gonna stick with Titus when you started speaking, and I was just thinking about data integrity, right? I mean, is what you put in is often what you get out. I mean, are you saying your data is 100% correct, or is the bot able to pick that out? How are you navigating that space?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's 100% accurate, but we've built in some processes and some controls to make sure that the human will still go and make sure. Like Rudolph's example about the EDI file that gets uploaded. So we know if that file is done and the robot has processed the invoices against that EDI file, that suspense account should be 0 the following morning. So we've got a day end that runs every night at 8 o'clock. So we know the following morning, before we even start, there's a few suspense accounts that we go and check and make sure that there's a 0. If it's not a 0, we know, okay, well, we need to go and figure out what happened here and what went wrong. TreasuryONE has also built some reports for us to show that if there was a specific source document that, like, let's say, for example, a bank remittance that needed to be processed, and for some reason on that day that remittance did not process, it actually gives you an error report to say, well, yesterday's remittance did not process. So again, then we know something went wrong, we go back and we fix it up, and we do it like that. So it takes us, call it 5 or 10 minutes in the morning just to make sure that there's no error reports, that all the accounts that should be 0 is 0, and then we know everything worked the way it should have worked.
Yeah, I had a question earlier. Somebody was saying, well, get all these bots on my job and I'll lose my job. But clearly what you're saying is that it actually helps you do your job better, isn't it? And that's really what it's doing, right? And just speaking of that, and there's a good question that's come in from Gavin, and I encourage the audience to a good time now to start putting your questions in the chat. We can pick it up. Gavin asked a question, and I'll probably pose it to both of you. I'll start with Tinas, and he's saying, how are you ensuring audit controls? Because the auditors are one of those people that are also not very happy. How are you keeping them satisfied in this process?
Yeah, so funny enough, we just finished with our year end. So notice as a 30 June year end. So this was the first year that they actually did work with this, and they accepted all of it. So we've explained to them the controls within it. I think to some extent they were actually happy to see it, because this is a robot that can only do what you're telling him to do. It can't veer off the way it should be processed. They can actually go and test the control and make sure that control was followed, where a human being can go and do something wrong by mistake or on purpose. That control cannot be broken by the bot. So I must be honest, our auditors were more than comfortable with this.
Rudolph, from your end, what are some of the things that you're telling your clients if this question comes up?
Yeah, say don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Yeah, no, look, I mean, the audit firms are pretty much on the ball. When it comes to these things, it's not like it's brand new. And we obviously make sure that we implement something called zero trust. So whenever the bot is doing something, it's validating its credentials and its authority to actually perform that specific task. So we would have a user set up in Autoline, in the client's ERP system. Tinus and them are working in Autoline, and there we would be given specific access only to functions that we need access to. And every time we'd access that function, we would validate our credentials. Those credentials are safely stored somewhere and maintained and encrypted and all those sorts of things. So the controls are really built into the platform to make it easy for auditors. But no, it's the same process. We're not changing the process in most cases. It's the same process, the same controls apply. It's just software doing the process instead of a user. But none of the controls sort of go away. If I can put it.
I'm sure there's one or two auditors on this call. There you go. You heard it from the horse's mouth, making it easier for you.
Yeah,
right?
and now they can give discounts on audit fees because it's less work for them to do.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. And Rudolph, we're speaking of discounts. What about you? I mean, what does this cost? Can we, is it the same right across? Give us a ballpark. Give us an idea if somebody wanted to get involved.
Look, it's let's say it's flexible. So depending on the side that you want to go and whether you want to go your own route, we've got options for that. If you want to do it as a service, we've also got options for that. But it's probably not as much as people think it is. And at the end of the day, it's like many investments. What you put in is what you get out. So if you make an upfront a large investment, there's a lot of attention on it, and you get your return on investment very quickly. But again, some clients, because for all our clients this is new to them, so they want to start with a least risky sort of deployment. That's about 50% of the clients. But like I say, it's big and small. It's flexible. Let's put it that way.
It's flexible. Does that mean they can shop around?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's true. There is a lot of competition. Luckily for us, we started doing this in our own business first. So Tinus's implementation went really smoothly because the mistakes that needed to be made, we made for our own account, and we started in 2017. So yeah, we've got a lot of experience, which has set us up well.
And a good question that's come from Jacques. But before I get to that, well, actually, let me start with the question, right? And I'll probably post it to Tinus first. And he's talking about process improvement, right? He's saying, are you using RPA as is in terms of your actual processes, or has it improved your processes and eliminating unnecessary steps? I think you may have touched on it, but perhaps there's an opportunity to be more direct.
Yeah, so I think definitely we've implemented our processes as is. I think through the years, we have really tried to streamline our processes already. So with this process, we didn't go and try and see where we could make the process shorter. I think the robot made it shorter in any case. So in terms of making things better, I think it's more about the hours that you save, or the human hours that we've saved. We save the last couple of months, now that we've implemented even more processes, we save in excess of 800 human hours a month. So yeah, so I think that to answer the question straight up, it's definitely the as-is process, but the improvement is about the hours that you save with the people that works for you.
I'm going to stay with you, Tinus, as we get to the tail end of our conversation today. We've got over 100 people here that are really excited at this conversation. What could you tell them if somebody wants to get into what would you say? What's your recommendation?
I'll say to them, just pull the trigger. I remember it was just more than a year ago that I attended one of these webinars just because I had interest in it. And beforehand, honestly thought that number one, that it must be very difficult to get it done. And number two, that it must be very expensive, thinking that it's probably going to cost me more than just employing another person, another two people. And obviously we started having the discussions with Rudolph and his team, and we saw how actually, because you're using that as-is process, it's very simple. and it honestly is not that expensive.
There you go. Rudolf, over to you for some closing remarks. And I'd like to thank the audience as you do that for such an intriguing conversation. We certainly should have it again. Some closing remarks from you, Rudolf.
Yeah, I mean, I can't improve on what Tina's just said. Yeah, like I say,
maybe tell them to buy a Hyundai in the process.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the first electrical Hyundai to come in. Maybe Tina's work can book me one.
Now you're talking.
But yeah, no, look, I mean, it's always a great community. There's always great questions that come up. I'll try and answer some of them if we didn't get to them over email after this. But yeah, I mean, I have to say, just like, I mean, Tina's team has been amazing. I mean, it's always a 50-50. We can only do 50% of the work. The other 50% is the client. They really challenged us, which made us a lot better, actually. And they really on the ball. And I always just say to people, it's always a 50-50. And I think, you know, we've worked really well together, but we can only take half the credit, maybe 30%. I think maybe 70% must go to Tinas and his team. So yeah, I'd just like to thank him for that, and thanks everyone for joining.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. Thank you very much to Tinas Venter, CFO of Hyundai South Africa, and Rudolf Jansen van Rensburg, who's the CTO at TreasuryONE. Really cool stuff that's happening. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our session. Meet the bots. You got a flavor of how Hyundai South Africa has transformed its finance teams, and that is it from us. But just before you go, I'll tell you what's coming up next. We're going to still stay on the digitization line with bridging the digital divide. We've got one stream coming up on the 10th of August, and followed that on the 12th of August, CIPC. It's that time to look at your new AFS and filing requirements that have come up. And thank you all for joining this session. We'll catch you up at the next one, and good afternoon.
Yes.
Thanks everyone.